Talking to you, anything comes to mind that you'd like to expand on, feel free. If I'm asking questions about things that you do not want to talk about, make sure to tell me, and just nothing else will be said.
Okay.
Okay, so starting out, before you joined the Army, were you drafted or did you
I
join
was
up?
drafted.
And what did you do beforehand?
I was going to college, University of Illinois. And I stayed out a semester to relieve my sister of the load of all the money needed for my education. And by that time they had the draft, and I was number one, I guess, picked out of the bowl. So I came in March 13th, 1941. And I could have been in sooner, but we had a lot of volunteers from Chicago. So they went ahead of me.
So where did you attend basic training?
Camp Calhoun, California, Coast Artillery.
Now I've heard Coastal Artillery from a couple of other guys as well. Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
Well, it was a very pleasant experience. I met a lot of movie stars being in San Diego, California. And then from there, after I finished my basic training, we went up to San Francisco, Fort Scott, and it was the 6th Coast Artillery. And stayed there, and then lo and behold, here comes Pearl Harbor. So all leaves and furloughs were canceled. I was due to leave Monday on a 14-day furlough, come back, serve another month, and finish my year and get out. But that didn't materialize. So after that, my dreams of returning home were shattered because I wanted to pursue my baseball career, and I couldn't do that. So then I applied for school at Fort Knox, Kentucky, the Armored School. And after I finished there, they sent me to the 8th Armored Division. And that division made categories for all subsequent armored divisions. And the 12th was one of them. And I was promoted to tech sergeant and sent to Camp Campbell, Kentucky. And we started our basic training there. And I was a S2 sergeant and also training NCO. And that made me physically fit. We had a colonel that taught judo, and he helped me to train the troops in the arts of judo and how to protect themselves and so forth. It was really interesting. And then later on he got to be a battalion commander, and they moved him. We had a Lieutenant Colonel Wyman who had a brother that was a 3-star general. And I think he thought he should be too. But he left, and he was replaced by Colonel Hartman. Colonel Hartman stayed there for a while. That's a judo expert. And then we got Colonel Harold M. Crawford, and I was hoping that he was still alive. He was a beautiful guy, a good leader, and he's done so much for me. He scared the daylights out of me one time. I was a master sergeant by that time. I was sergeant major. And he called me in one day. He says, I want you to turn over all your administrative duties to Corporal Lee. You're relieved of your duties, and you report to the personnel section for reassignment. I allegedly failed to furnish transportation for the troops for showers. And I didn't even know of the requirement, but they fixed it up that I was responsible, and I was sent back to the personnel section. So I had a reunion with the boys I knew, or men, I should say, and about 11:30 at night, I was awakened by the personnel sergeant major told to report to the adjutant general. I says, now? Yeah. So, okay, I reported to the colonel before I even had a chance to finish my salute. He started tearing me apart. He couldn't understand how a sergeant major with my experience could be so lackadaisical with my responsibility of furnishing trucks for the troops. Because then they had a chance to shower, change clothes, and so forth. And I says, well, I don't remember that at all. And I remember the Coleman lantern there. He reached over to a desk and he got a razor blade and cut off my chevrons. And after he cut them off, he says, "That'll be all. Report back to the personnel section for a reassignment." Just as I reached the door, he said, "Oh, come back here. I forgot something." And he got a couple gold bars and he pinned them on me. Whew. That scared me. I didn't know what to do. And these gold bars belonged to Colonel Crawford. He wanted me to have them because I was to be the first battlefield appointee in the division. And he wanted me to be the senior. Hence, the day before, because the next day they were going to commission 8 more sergeants. But he wanted me to have that one day. I said, "What difference does it make?" He says, "Well, maybe not now, but someday it may make the difference whether you get promoted or not that one day." So be it. So anyhow, when I reported back to the unit, the colonel wanted me back, which was contrary to policy, because familiarity breeds contempt. But I trained these kids, and he knew it. He knew I wanted to be with him, so he grabbed me. "Okay, you stay with me." So right away he appoints me as a forward observer. So I had a choice of being an air observer or a tank observer. So I said, "I'll take the air, because then maybe I could sleep on a cot or under sheets at night. You know, we're further back, and that would be quite a treat. These guys live like kings, and the food is better and everything." So anyhow, the next morning I was awakened about 6 to report for duty as a air observer with Les Johnson. I was hoping he was alive too. I wanted to see him. And the sergeant came and gave me a parachute. And I never had one on. He strapped me in. He says, "How's that feel?" I said, "It feels good." I says, "Well, when do I get to use it?" He says, "Well, if things get tough up there and you have to bail out, just push that door open, roll out, count to 3, and pull the ring, and it should open." I said, "What do you mean it should?" He says, "Well, it should work because I packed that chute myself." I says, but then he says, "If it doesn't open, your worries are over." That was heartening. So I didn't know what else to say about that. So we went up. We were up in the air, and about 20 minutes later, over the intercom, Les told me, "Be on the lookout for an ME-262. I says, "Les, they're not even airborne yet. They're just building them." He said, "I don't know, I got a report that there's one around." The next thing I know, brrr, from underneath. And he just took off. And of course, Les landed. And he always had a roll of tape with him to patch up holes. Because, you know, if you go back in the air with those fiber planes, oh, you know that better than I do, it would just rip more. So he patched it up. He says, "Let's get the hell out of here. We're behind German lines." I said, "Okay." So we got in the plane, and he does this. I said, "What are you doing, Les?" He said, "There's a 3-foot fence up there. I want to be sure that we jump it, and I'll have 50 more yards of runway." I says, "Well, let's do it again, but let's do it at the count of 3, and I'll help you." So he went down there, and we both did it. We got over it just barely. Bounced along, and my God, there's a great big smokestack up ahead of us. And Les, like he knew how, in his inimitable way, banked, and we came back to the air section. And then, of course, we had to be debriefed. So when I went to see the colonel, now it was Tyler. Before it was sergeant. I had respect, but now I was a second lieutenant. So he said, "Well, how was it, Tyler?" I says, "Colonel, is that tank still available?" He says, "No, but I'll put you on my staff. I want you on my staff as adjutant." Of course, that gave me a few additional duties. One was Graves registration officer, inspection officer, and a few others. But that Graves registration was something. Picking up bodies is something. It wasn't too bad yet because they were frozen. But we were always cautioned because they could have been booby-trapped, like the Germans had a habit of doing, either their bodies or our bodies. So we had a system of lassoing them, dragging them, rolling them over, and then put them in the shroud, mattress cover. And I picked up Germans too, and I was given hell for that. I said, hey, listen, that kid's mother would like to know where he is too. I don't know, I just felt that way, being a Christian religious. So we put him in and for transportation back to the quartermaster depot for disposition. The very first fella I had to pick up, though, was a good friend of mine who was a forward observer. And he left his tank to go reconnoiter a bridge, and he got shot right between the eyes. And I had to go get him and put him in a shroud and send him back. And that touched me. That really did. Well, anyhow, after we got through it there, we started moving along, of course, the Rhine River there. We crossed the river at Worms, as you know better than I do, probably. And we went on the 40. Oh, we were in the 7th Army. We were attached to the 7th Army when we landed in France. Because going overseas, if I may backtrack a little bit, we lost our tanks in the convoy. One of the ships was sunk. We lost our artillery, so we went to Tidworth, England, to wait for more guns and additional training. And that gave us an opportunity to go visit London too, of course. And that was quite an experience. And finally we got all our equipment and we were shipped via canal to land at Le Havre, France. That's when we started. That was with the 7th Army. And then we went to the 9th Army. That's why they call us what they did. Then George Patton took us. And that's the day we all remember. We had to wear neckties from then on. Prior to that, we wore our scarves to keep our collars clean, free of dirt, sweat. But no, General Patton insisted we wear neckties. So be it, that was it. So we wore neckties. And then I had another experience with, we just got a new man in. We were at Burgau, and a sniper got him. Just reported in, replacement. And he had a dog tag, and it says agnostic. And when I saw it, the kid wanted me to say a prayer for him. I says, but your dog tags say you're agnostic. He says, please, sir, forget that. Please say a prayer for me and give me absolution. So being a Catholic, I just made an act of contrition and crossed him and so forth, and he died. I didn't want to write that mother a letter of condolence. I turned that particular letter of condolence, which was my job, part of my job, to the chaplain. I figured he could do a much better job than that. And then we had a couple more people shot. Then we saw where the fire was coming from, so I got one of the tanks out there and we leveled the house. We got the snipers, obviously, but there was nothing left but the foundation. Oh, we were mad. And, just 200 yards, 300 yards away, he's picking us off, and we had a couple people shot. That didn't go too well with. And then we ended the war in Z, Austria. We couldn't go any further with our tanks, and armor. And then when the war ended, then I was shipped to the 1st Armored Division for occupation. I wanted to stay there a little longer. And so I did, and that was a good experience. And it happened to be that I met a very pleasant colonel who had twins, and he loved horses. He confiscated 22 horses from the Germans and dogs, and so I loved horses. I had a lot to do with them. So he put me in charge of his horses. And oh, I had a beautiful horse. I was going to bring a couple of them home, but where do you go be stationed where they have horses? I knew that would create a problem, even though these were the fortunes of war. But we got this one particular horse from a baron. Oh, beautiful animal. 17 hands high, 5-gaited animal. So when it came time to turn him over back to him, I gave him 5 additional horses for that, and he appreciated that. And he got his horse in good shape because I insisted those animals be treated right. I caught a couple first lieutenants, or a couple lieutenants, at the officers' club. They tied up on a railing, and they're sweated. Oh, I got after them. You don't leave an animal like that. So I took those horses away from them, and I had them sent to the stable and had somebody wet them down, dry them off. And so then after that, let's see. Oh, I became special service officer. The colonel and I were the only two that had confiscated automobiles. I'll never forget, I had an Opel. I didn't need a Jeep, but I did get their gas. And the colonel had, of course, a Mercedes. And it was my job to go get film for the troops and so on. So I had to go distances, you know. And then I was also made club officer. I had 3 enlisted clubs, 2 officers' clubs I had to run. And one day when I went out on, I was officer of the day, I went on patrol of the town to look for curfew violators. So while I was going down the street in Geppingen, Germany, I saw somebody just run behind a tree. And I said, "Sergeant, stop here. Beautiful girl." So most naturally I wanted to date her. But I did want to take her home. So she told me where she lived. And she said, "Well, you can let me off here and I'll go right through the yard here." And I made a date with her for Tuesday. I went to Tuesday, she didn't live there. She just went further and further to keep me from seeing her. But I did catch her about a week later in town, and I scared the daylights out of her. I shouldn't have. But I did get a date with her, and a year to the day I married her. Oh, she was a beautiful girl. She spoke 5 languages. She was quite instrumental in helping me with my future duties with the United Nations. I don't know, you want me to go through that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had several assignments in Seattle, of course, with anti-aircraft. I stayed in the service. And I moved around quite a bit. And I went back to Germany, ironically enough, to the same town where we were before. And I'll never forget Wiesbaden. The Germans, when we first went in, declared it an open city because it was a beautiful town. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. Health spas and things of that nature. They wanted to preserve it, an old town. So we agreed. So we went in without firing a shot. Hour later, the Air Force comes in, opens up a club, officers' club, and that was a. Oh, excuse me, you're Air Force. It was really funny. They took over one of the hotels and opened up a beautiful club. Oh God, they made it beautiful. So we stayed there, and then we got married. I said, came back to the States, and then I was shipped to Korea. Had 7 unpleasant months. Worst assignment I ever had. Have to take the bad with the good. So it was time for me to rotate, and I served with General Clark before, and I knew his whole staff. So I wrote to one of his colonels, "Hey, you're coming to take over Far East Command? Can I come get a job?" He said, "I'm retiring, but I'm going to turn this letter over to General," I forget his name, 2-star general. "You look him up when you go to Tokyo, and I'm sure he'll take care of you." So, okay. I turned in my request, went to see him. He said, "Okay, put in your request through normal channels. Send me a copy direct." And then I was assigned to, believe it or not, I went on R&R to Tokyo. General Clark was in charge, Far East Command. So I went out to see the cronies that I used to deal with, his staff, who were quite friendly. He comes in the office. He said, "Tyler, what are you doing here? You following me?" I said, "It appears so, General." He said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, fine." He used to bounce my daughter on his knee at Fort Monroe when we were stationed together. Very friendly general. And his wife was also nice. So he said, "Come on with me." So we went in his office. So we talked about personal things. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm looking for a job, General." He said, "Oh, you'll get one here." So anyhow, I was with him about 10, 15 minutes. Then we go out the front door, and lo and behold, there's 2 4-stars. Admiral Radford and Westmoreland. 2 4-stars. General's waiting to see him. And he had his arm on my shoulder. He says, "Well, you come and see me when you're assigned up here." I said, "I will, General." Made me feel good. These guys waiting for me to finish. So we went to a lot of parties, and when I left Korea, United Nations, they had cocktail parties every night practically. So to the very first one I went to, this general looked at me. He says, "Where's Tommy?" That was my wife. I says, "She's still home, General. I just got here from Korea." He said, "She should be here next to your side for these social events." I says, "General, I'm doing the best I can." So anyhow, I got a desperate call from my wife the next morning. "The packers are here, the movers are here." And she was afraid that they're going to send her back to Russia, because they threatened to do that once before when we were in Germany. Because she had dealings, she acted as an interpreter for our Russian-American liaison officer. And so she had contact with the Russians too. And they thought she was spying. So anyhow, it wasn't long after that, she joined me. And rank made no difference, whether it was diplomatic, princess, queen of Netherlands, all visit. To her, everybody was the same, and they loved her for it. She was so simple, so beautiful, so charming, and she spoke a lot of languages. She violated a lot of rules, though. In Thailand, when you dance with a Thai, you don't embrace if you're not married. She says, "I'll fix their wagon." And my first social era was, there was a diplomat, French diplomat, that lit a cigar, or reached for a cigar. So I took my Zippo lighter out and snapped it and lit it. And my colonel called me, "Don't ever do that again. Use a wooden match." Because the gasoline penetrate in that Corona or whatever it was would be. So I learned that lesson. And then, "Oh, you're not supposed to touch royalty." Well, Prince in waiting in Japan was there. and I tripped over a rug. I was bringing him a drink. It was our job to be sure that they were all taken care of, you know, being servile. And I did touch him, and I apologized to him, and he says, that was an accident, that's all right. He forgave me for it, but my boss saw it. Don't ever do that. I don't know whether it was the booze that I had, but I was only entitled to drink 2 drinks. And at our clubs, I could control it, because then I could have my 7-Up. They wouldn't know what it was. But when we visited at the various embassies, they were out to, so they could get some special favors. You know, they were quite crafty. But that was a very, very good assignment. And then, let's see, I came back, and then, I had an experience when I worked for General Clark at Fort Monroe. I trained the first integrated unit in the Army. General Clark picked me. I had 60 African Americans and 60 white to go through a whole program of basic training. So we did that, and then we had the graduation exercises, and that was at Fort Eustis. All I had to do was pick up the phone, call the Pentagon. I'd get aircraft, I'd get anything. You know, it was really funny. But he wanted a good job done. So on the so-called graduation exercises, I got the men all together. I said, okay, pick a buddy, go in the woods, be ready for a full field inspection, 2 hours. Lo and behold, here comes the general. What are you doing, Tyler? So I told him, I want to see what you're doing. So, okay, I took him to the woods, black and white, black and white, black and white, 2 blacks maybe, 2 whites, black and white, black and white. And he stopped me. He says, Tyler, how were they picked? He was afraid that I had purposely selected black. I said, no, General. I told him what I told you. I said, pick a buddy and go in the woods and pitch a tent. That's the way it turned out. He says, I'm very relieved, because that could have created a problem. So came time for lunch. So most naturally, I was going to put General Clark at the head of the table. And Pop Good, the colonel who was his deputy, said, Tyler, don't you ever do that. You sit at the head of the table. This is your home, your show. Put the old man on the right, I'll sit on your left. But don't ever give up that seat. So I learned something, because I was going to extend that courtesy, you know. And I got a beautiful letter from General Clark, commendation for that. And after that, you probably heard about it, 10% of each unit had to be African American. And it still exists now, I think. Because before, see, during World War II, we had transportation, quartermaster were all blacks. And they were servile-like, you know, to furnish us with the gas, with, you know. But the combat troops, no, we didn't have any. Except one time when I found out here, we had he's 96, anti-aircraft unit was attached to us. And he was black. I didn't realize that. And I had a talk with him out there one day. And that was really interesting. And, well, came time for me to retire. So I was sent to Fort Lawton, Oklahoma. Fort Lawton, Washington. And I had 6 more months to go. And because of my experience, I guess, with the UN people, I was given an assignment of 14 nations, different nations, to take them on an escort tour of the missile sites, Rock Island Arsenal, Huntsville, and had to escort them throughout all these units. And we met Warren Brown. I don't know if you know him or not. He was a B1, B2 expert, the German scientist that we captured, put in our Billy Wick. That's in my story too. And oh, he was nice. Oh, he was real nice. But that was quite a thrill to meet him, you know, of all people. And we got through with that tour, and we ended up in Detroit, Michigan, auto show. So we were all invited. They insisted that all my officers that I was escorting go in their dress uniforms because they want to take pictures. You know, good PR or whatever. So the models, oh, the gorgeous gals, of course, you know, modeling with the cars, but they left the cars alone. They went with these Ford officers. They were really decked out, you know. So it took a lot of pictures, a lot of movies, and so forth. And then I got a nice letter from the general on that. And then I retired April 1961. And then I figured, I'm still young. What do I do now? So I went to work for Boeing. Stayed with them for 20 years. And that was a good job. That was a good assignment. I enjoyed that. I tried real estate for a month, but that was too frustrating. Just about ready. I'm ready to kick off my shoes on Sunday evening. Oh, Tyler, we'd like to see that house again, you know? So I gave that up. But I had a very interesting life, and I have a very wonderful woman now. I met her. I went for glasses. I broke them. She said, are you a golfer? I said, well, I like to golf. She said, you throw those glasses against a tree? I said, no, just against the ground. And I broke them. I said, isn't there a warranty on these things? Well, a year to the day, I left there. And I saw her name, and I saw Dr. Biffer, who was an optometrist. I said, you married that guy? He said, no, I used to be. So I said, are you dateable? Yeah, so a year to the day I married her. And, she's wonderful. She's with me here now. She was born the day I graduated high school. So they all accuse me of being a cradle robber. But she's wonderful. She's wonderful. And I have a happy life. They all treat me real good. Overly so sometimes. They, you want to, you know, always out to help. Like my golfing cronies. I have 4. One's a doctor, one's a retired McDonald's executive, and one is a retired Marine, rugged. But they all treat me so well. They're all about 15 years younger than I am. So they rake the sand traps, they do this, pick up my bag. It makes me feel kind of helpless, but they're wonderful guys, beautiful guys. We play every Tuesday and Thursday. So, and then we live in a condo in Scottsdale, Arizona, which we like. Weather gets a little warm. When it gets to be 110, 13, I don't golf. I figure I can golf another day. But at my age, to go golfing, I want to play another day. So we get along real well. And I volunteer at the Mayo Hospital. I drive what they call a tram. It's a golf cart, actually. I pick up people from the hospital, take them to their cars, or vice versa. I go up to get discharges, bring them down to the car, deliver flowers and things like that. I enjoy that work. It keeps me busy. Another day of the week. Mm-hmm. And then on Wednesday, I go to Bible study. So I like that too. So I fill my week. I try to. And I schedule all my doctor appointments on either Monday or Wednesday so I can squeeze them in. So that's about it.
Well, sir, I want to thank you for, first off, sitting and talking with me. Secondly, for waiting so long. And third, of course, for letting me record this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.